Joining us now is Democratic Senator Richard Blumenthal of Connecticut. He's a member of the Senate Judiciary Committee. Senator, thank you so much for joining us on this Sunday. I want to start with a back and forth that you had with a Trump nominee, a judicial nominee, on Wednesday.
Judge Cook, who won the 2020 election?
A joint session of Congress certified that Joseph Biden won the election. And
Judge Cronin, you're already on the district court. Who won the 2020 election?
Senator, under the constitutional system, and in particular the 12th Amendment, Joseph Biden received the majority of electoral college vote.
Yes or no? Did President Biden win the 2020 elections?
The United States Congress certified Joseph Biden.
Sir, you are showing cowardice.
It was you and your colleague, Senator Cory Booker, there. I was talking to someone who's not in politics, and they asked me, why does anyone care how folks answer this question? If they say it was certified, if they kind of throw their hands up and say, he was president. But can you explain to folks why it matters? And I think a lot of our viewers know, but just so we got it on the record, why it matters when people ask the question, who won the election, that it's easy for people to say that Joe Biden won, and why that's important, why you want to get folks on the record on that.
Profoundly important question, Eugene. A lot of people may say, oh, well, that seems like a very technical, common sense question. Of course, Joe Biden won the election, but it is essential test of their independence. When I ask a nominee for the federal judiciary whether Joe Biden won the election, and they say, well, it was certified, and they refuse to give an accurate answer, they are simply providing a canned, rehearsed response that is dictated to them by the White House. And this position of trust requires an element of independence and courage, frankly, to stand up to the president. Federal judges have to stand up to the president of the United States. And so it is an essential test of whether they are willing to defy the Trump obsession and fixation with his losing the 2020 election. We all know that Joe Biden won. If these officials are unwilling to say so, they should be disqualified from this position of trust.
And yet they still keep getting confirmed, primarily because Republicans are in control of the Senate. I just want to switch gears just for a little bit away from these federal judges and bring up something that happened in Michigan during the primary. This is a story from Wednesday from Bridge, Michigan. DOJ sent election monitors to Michigan. No drama ensued. Okay, that's great, Senator. But why would the Department of Justice do that? Do you see that as, say, a dry run for November? And then on top of that, how concerned are you that not only would the Trump administration send election monitors around the country in November, but that they also would send ICE agents to polling places around the country in November?
I'm deeply concerned that the message of sending those monitors to Lansing and Detroit and other cities in Michigan was essentially, we're watching. The message is, we have monitors on the ground, even if they're unobtrusive and silent in this primary, they could be there actively intervening in some future primary. And you're absolutely right. They have to be seen as part of a pattern of efforts to assault free and fair elections and, in fact, suppress the vote. The President of the United States issued an executive order in March saying that the United States Postal Service could not transmit or deliver mail-in ballots if the names were not on the Postal Service's own list of eligible voters. That is an unconstitutional, illegal interference with mail-in voting, and that's why 23 state attorneys general blocked it through a federal court order. Last Monday, it was argued in the United States Supreme Court. Again, part of a pattern of potentially interfering, and yes, sending ICE agents or maybe even the National Guard to polling places on Election Day to intimidate and create fear and discourage people from voting.
According to the New York Times, Heidi Stirrup is one of at least 25 different county election officials across the country who have taken office since the 2024 federal election, who through their public statements or their actions align themselves with the broader election denier movement. That is according to a New York Times review of a new database from Voting Rights Lab. That's a nonprofit voting rights organization. To recap, that is at least 25 election deniers already working in county election roles all across the country. But now, even more election deniers are running for local office, for state office, for federal elections this year. According to States United Action, that's a nonprofit, nonpartisan group whose mission is to protect our elections and our democracy. This year, there are 92 races for statewide offices that oversee elections. That's governor and attorney general and secretary of state. Of those races, 32 election deniers are vying for positions in which they would be overseeing elections. Let me say that one more time. 32 people who have questioned or denied or spread conspiracies about the 2020 election, which has been litigated over and over and over again, are running for positions that would oversee and administer future elections. This is a Mayday situation, you guys. 20 election deniers are running for governor, 2 of whom are incumbents. 10 election deniers are running for Secretary of State. 9 election deniers are running for Attorney General. 3 are incumbents. These are not ceremonial offices. Governors appoint election officials. Secretaries of State oversee election administration. Attorneys General investigate election-related crimes and defend election laws in court. Altogether, they help shape how elections are run and how disputes over those elections are resolved. This is scary stuff. I am not exaggerating. When it comes to the House and Senate, at least 102 election deniers, 102, won primaries and will be on the ballot come November. And it does not stop there because why would it stop there? This is also happening in the judiciary. The Senate keeps confirming Trump's judicial nominees, many of whom have questioned the legitimacy of the 2020 election.
Aaron, I want to look at these different polls of Trump's approval rating at historic lows, because usually when presidents see their numbers low, they go, oh, back up a little bit. Something might be off. Not so much this time around with Trump. CNN SSRS poll, 34%. AP NORC poll, 33%. Quinnipiac poll, 32%. Reuters Ipsos poll, 35%. The first term, it felt like, and Jackie, you correct me if I'm wrong. The first term, it felt like Donald Trump. It felt like Donald Trump, if like the bad polls would move him, bad headlines made him change pace. And Aaron, that has stopped.
Well, Eugene, those are fake polls.
Yeah.
Those aren't the real polls. The real polls inside the White House that he's being briefed on have him at 100% among Republicans right now, which is not true.
Yes.
I think ultimately this is a president who's not running for re-election. No matter how many times he says he wants to, he's not going to. And I don't think he cares what happens in 2026 in November. I don't think he really cares what happens in 2028. I think he's focused on enriching himself, his family, and his companies as much as possible and getting out of Dodge. That is the goal over the next 2 years, and he's going to use his executive authority to do whatever and however he can to get that done.
So interesting to me because every president ends up as a lame duck at some point, and they start typically thinking about what the legacy is going to be, right? That second term is a lot of like, what am I leaving here on earth? And mostly we're just getting gold or gold plated things.
And yet he still, at least according to one of our colleagues who wrote this week about a lot of the rules Trump has broken, but has still been able to maintain his kingmaker status. And while Trump's popularity, this is according to Elizabeth Moline, is declining rapidly among large swaths of voters, including groups that have been core to his base, new polling from YouGov shows that almost all self-described MAGA Republicans still support Trump, awarding him an 89 net job approval rating. That gives him a lot of power to play kingmaker in Republican primaries, although it doesn't always pay off in the general election. Ankush, I'm wondering, all of the time that we've spent trying to talk about Trumpism and the MAGA movement, I mean, is Trump MAGA at this point, and is there a Trumpism, or is it just Trump?
I think it's just Trump. Yeah. And I mean, look, those polls always come out the same way because they're the way that they're constructed is you have to self-identify as a MAGA Republican. So almost definitely you're going to end up answering yes when you then get the question, do you support President Trump? The actual aggregate polls across the country, as you all know, are very bad for him. Right, he is losing not just Democrats and the traditional anti-Trump people, but critically, he's losing huge swaths of independents
and non-MAGA Republicans.
Right. So, the question of like checks, though, it fascinates me because you're right. Ordinarily, you would expect him to have his own set of checks, but then we have people in Congress too who are not exercising their own power. I mean, we just had, obviously, it's top of my mind. Bill Cassidy totally roll over on Todd Blanche. He had decisive authority in that situation. And his decision, I think, is going to have a very dramatic effect on law enforcement in this country and potentially even the midterms in this country. Remember, Todd Blanche has said that there's a ton of evidence that the 2020 election was rigged, totally deranged lie that should have disqualified him by itself. He said, what's the big deal about having ICE agents go to the polls? So, it would be great if, while the president is not interested in the traditional levers of persuasion or self-correction, if the people in this town who actually do have those levers might use them themselves.
Aaron, apparently, I'm going to talk about the reflecting pool. You went to the reflecting pool yesterday. I, on my walk yesterday, saw it from afar. But
Trump is already laying the groundwork to tilt the next political fight in his party's favor. And critics argue he's doing it because he knows his support is slipping. Instead of winning people over by making a stronger case for his ideas, the accusation is that he is increasingly trying to reshape the system itself. That mindset extends beyond elections and into Congress. The argument is that Trump's priority isn't necessarily building a Republican majority to pass legislation. It's making sure Democrats don't regain control of the House or Senate, because a Democratic majority could mean aggressive investigations into him, his administration, and the people around him. And that is why his critics say he's willing to fight to keep control at almost any cost. One of the clearest examples they point to is gerrymandering. Trump has openly pushed Republicans to pursue more aggressive redistricting, including unusual mid-cycle efforts designed to create safer seats. The criticism is simple. Instead of politicians competing for voters, politicians get to choose which voters they want in their districts. That completely flips the idea of representation on its head. A president is supposed to represent the electorate, not reshape the electorate to protect himself politically. The same concern shows up in the fight over mail-in voting. Trump has repeatedly challenged voting rules and pushed for restrictions on certain ballots, although some of those efforts have been blocked in court. His opponents argue that the broader strategy is clear: tighten control over how ballots are cast, counted, and accepted when the political outcome looks unfavorable. And that is the larger accusation hanging over all of this. When persuasion stops working, the focus shifts from winning voters to changing the rules of the game.